Hey guys, welcome back to Studio Nights, and today we are here with Philip Donavan. Welcome, Philip.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So Philip is the final third of our Global Approaches professors from last summer. So we've completed the trio.
Okay.
Yes.
You're currently working at Little, and you're currently teaching G2 at Orlando CityLab.
I am.
How's that going?
I'm a glutton for punishment. It's going well. I think that I taught last semester on main campus, and there's a rigor to probably people who are working that understand deadlines that I know as a student. I went right through. I didn't work in an architecture office until I got out of grad school. So had no exposure to it. I lived in La La Land, gluing planes of things together that I thought looked cool, which at the time was in vogue, I guess, if people even say that anymore. But there's rigor to them, to many of them. And that's appreciated, especially when you think about where you need to be in the profession.
Yeah.
All the things we have to do on top of being creative.
Yeah. We went through G2 and it was tough. It's tough to juggle that semester specifically with work, but it's also, I think for me, and I would think the girls agree with me, having the professional experience also kind of helped going into that class.
Yeah, because it's so much about building systems and actual producing something that has to be real. There's structural systems you got to allow from it. It's the first kind of real dose of that, I think. And so it seems very intense. When Bender gave me the assignment and I looked at last year's, probably your year's, the syllabus, it seems intense. And then we got on a call and they said, these students, you can't pass them like you would, because in other semesters where you may objectively or subjectively think that it's good, there's quantitative things that have to happen in this semester.
Yeah. So you just mentioned that you didn't work while you were in school.
I did not. So
can you tell us a little bit about, first, what kind of brought you into the world of architecture? What was the first thing that kind of sparked that for you?
So I'm, one of those kids that grew up building lots of models, Legos, but also lots of basswood models and airplane models. And so I love doing that, but this was 1999 when I got to, was going to go to school. I was going to become a fighter pilot.
Wow.
So I was very close to enrolling in the Naval Academy. And then they said, look, you're not going to fly. Your vision is just on the edge. And we have too many people who have perfect vision. So, but I didn't think I had bad vision. I never wore glasses or anything, but, so I opted not for that, to do that. And my whole family back 2-3 generations went to UF, and I grew up near UF. My mom was a nurse at Shands at UF, and I wanted to get out of Dodge. Like I wanted to get way out of Florida and experience something else. But I came around to it. My best friend was going. So long story long, I went to orientation, didn't know what I was going to do because had my heart set for 18 years on being a fighter pilot in the Navy, as my dad was. And at that time, the .com bubble was a thing. So it was the rise of eBay and PayPal and really, but I mean, we were just coming out of the AOL world, dial-up, right? I got to school never having an email address, to college, never, first real email address. I guess I had an AOL one, but so it was this time of a lot of energy around computers and computer science. Not that I was a computer nerd at all, but just what else was I going to do? So I got to orientation with my mom, and the computer science orientation was in the afternoon. I had 2 big blocks, so we had to kill time. So she said, your grandmother always wanted to be an architect. So I'm going to go sit on that one just to kill time. Not having anything else to do. So I said, fine, I'll go with you. And sat in there, and I forget who was talking, some older professor, and he was talking about building models and bringing buildings to life. And I guess, and I haven't actually thought about it till right now, but I grew up working with my dad, who, when he got out of the Navy, was a fire alarm and security alarm salesman. So he ran his own business selling fire alarms and security alarms. And in the summers, I would work for him. and crawling through attics in Florida and running wiring. And so I did, when I say I didn't work through school, I worked every summer doing that job all the way through grad school. One summer I worked as an apprentice electrician. So I was around the building industry. I knew enough. My dad was always building things. We did additions to the house. So I was probably influenced in those ways. And when the guys started talking, by the end of it, I said, that's what I'm going to do. And I just never looked back.
So you did both undergrad and grad in Gainesville?
No, I did undergrad in Gainesville. Loved it, did well at it. And then I didn't want to stick around. So I went to University of Virginia for grad school.
Oh, how was that?
It was great. That was a school that there were a lot of professors at UF that were head scratching. Why are you going to UVA? We want you to stay here.
Yeah.
You're a good student. When I went to tour, I wanted to get out. I still wanted to get out away and experience something different. And when I went to tour, talking to these students, there was this fundamental qualitative dialogue going on. There was just really rich dialogue around their design, and the professors were these well-published professors, and they were also bringing in, I worked with Williams and Chin, I worked with Shigeru Ban, I worked with who are some of the others? They had Asymptote, which is a name that doesn't rise very much anymore, but back in 2003, they were a really big firm in the world of architecture. And so they were being exposed to a lot of cool voices in the profession. And it was a beautiful place. Charlottesville, Virginia is amazing. So I did 2 years there, and it was good. It was another look at architecture.
So when you finished grad school, I'm assuming you didn't come back to Florida.
I didn't. I didn't come back for a long time. Yeah. Which is interesting. I'm a 6th generation Floridian. So my family has been in Florida driving cattle around the state for years, hundreds of years, and a couple hundred years at least, almost. And maybe further back, who knows? That I hear there's some native blood in our line somewhere, but I kept going north. So I got out, I graduated, I took a job with a firm, not unlike Little, in Princeton, New Jersey. And so I moved to Manhattan.
Oh, wow.
And I commuted out. I worked in Manhattan, and then I left. I worked there for a few years and worked in Manhattan after that at a firm for a few years.
Was it an architecture firm?
Yeah. So the first one was Hillier, which is a big corporate firm. They were doing work all over the country, all over the world. And I worked for Barbara and Bob Hillier, which was interesting. I got hired into by Bradley Walters, which you all may know him. Yeah. So Bradley gave me my first job out of school, doing special projects for the Hillier. So they had a studio where they could take on interesting projects that didn't fit into retail or healthcare or corporate. So worked on some very cool projects right out of school, cutting my teeth, and stayed there for a couple of years.
So we kind of want to hear about, for you going from school to work, what was that transition like? Because it's very different what you do professionally versus what they teach in school.
Yeah. It was a little terrifying, especially since I hadn't worked through school at all in a firm. I knew I had a lot of working with my dad. There was a lot of rigor. There was a lot of perfection. And so I knew how to work well, but this was a different type of work. That was a lot of manual work, even with electricians. But I also, in school, there was a lot of rigor. I spent too much time in the studio. Largely, I left studios for Saturday games. I never missed a football game, often basketball, but otherwise I was there. Right. And I had found this thing that felt like I was really good at, mediocre athlete, in high school, and just, nothing special in regular school, but I had this passion for architecture, the design process. And so, the work that small group was doing was aligned with that. So it didn't come crashing to a halt. I had a buddy who got out of Yale. So after he graduated, my best friend, Tim Kirkby, we went to UF together. He got out and went to Yale, and he got hired out of Yale doing work. He was designing crown molding details for somebody's apartment in New York in their bathroom. for like 6 months, he drew counter molding in this bathroom. And I thought he was going to go off the deep end. And so he was getting there. So that was a very different experience. But and I had a group that was very caring for the most part. That was, there were only 4 of us. So it wasn't this big corporate machine that I was just one small cog in. We were our little own design studio.
Okay.
So, and it was kind of under the radar because Hillier was just a big corporate firm that was doing big corporate work, and they had some excellent corporate work, but it was servicing clients. So it was good for a couple of years.
Did you have any while you were either in UF or in Virginia where you were in school, or later on when you started working professionally, any mentors that really kind of pushed you?
Yeah, there were 2 that many. I mean, at UF at that time, there was this group of professors, and they're largely all gone. There's 2 guys left that actually started teaching when I was in school there. Mike Montoya.
I know Montoya.
Yeah. Okay. So I was in his first studio teaching. It was design, I want to say 4. And he was a good one, right? I feel like Mike has this compassion with the way that he teaches. He's a great listener. I wish I was that good of a listener. And he has this interesting way of looking at things that's different than some of the other professors at that time it was all this very rigorous design process. And he stood out. The other one was at UVA, a man named John Quale, who just passed away, and I'm pretty sad because he wasn't that old. But he was really the first one that exposed me to this idea of sustainability or green building. And he had a passion for it. And when it was still, when I was in school, it was just becoming a buzzword. LEED had been around, but it was still largely, especially in design schools, it wasn't a big thing. I started hearing that from some people like Shigeru Ban and some others, but it was still an outlier. But this guy was embedding it deep in the work, and I think it left a mark on me. He was, great. Although after kept up with him long after school because he was also a good listener, I think.
Were your projects focused on sustainability?
Yeah, that's interesting. My buddy, one of my other best friends who I met at UVA, he and I we would be there all night, usually working on stuff. And we had just this running dialogue about how we couldn't understand why this was an overlay. Because it was still, it felt like a checklist when you heard it in circles. Yeah. And it largely, sometimes people refer to it as that still. Certifications are a checklist, but that's not real sustainability. We've talked about that in class, right?
Yeah.
And we were just inquisitive on why felt like an overlay. And so I tried to, in some ways, at that time still too, and this was 23 years ago, was trying to embed it, but not sure how, because it was in conflict it felt like it was in conflict to a lot of the design process that I had learned what I thought I had learned at UF about designing buildings. And really that was all just about reframing the way we think about things, think about the world. We're a profession that has to deal in creativity, but then make real things that people exist within.
Right.
People largely don't live outside anymore, right? We live in buildings, we work in buildings, and there's a lot of ways that we can ruin people's lives with buildings.
Was it Virginia, the school there, was it more technical heavy or more design?
It was a balance of both. So where I felt like UF was much more design oriented, UVA, they were a little more grounded. Now that could have also been a grad program, but I was a TA for the 2 years I was there, and those students had a good grasp on the way things go together.
Yeah.
Not just on the why. So
that's important.
Yeah.
I think that's what I enjoy more about the technical side, is because I want to learn how it works.
It actually happens.
Yeah, not just that it does, you
right.
know?
Or it doesn't, and you just say, well, we're not going to talk about that one.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
Why
somebody's
doesn't
not
it work?
happy.
How
Yeah.
can we make it work?
Mhm.
That problem solving side of
Right. I mean, we did that all through school. We
Yeah.
solved problems, but to a point, and then there's that handoff. And it's gotten, even in the 20 years that I've been working, that the handoff to somebody to build it has evolved significantly to drawing more, or feeling like we need to draw more, or just it's a different relationship these days. But when you have a good relationship with a contractor partner, you can learn so much, or even subcontractor partners.
Yeah.
If we're listening, but we're not taught to listen.
Yeah.
We're taught to be the hero. You are the designer, and there's a story, who knows if it's true, but Frank Lloyd Wright in Falling Water bolted the furniture down because he didn't want the people to move it, because that's where he designed it to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't
remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So beautiful work, but where does that ego end?
Where's the line drawn?
It's also like, you know, we design spaces, and when we're doing that, we're like, this is how we imagine this to feel like, but everybody is going to feel it differently.
Yeah.
So there has to be this
flexibility
and
to a certain extent.
Yeah.
And not only how you feel in the space, I think how it functions as well. Sometimes we don't, as architects, we don't understand how the space will be used as, and we design it in a way, and it's used completely different. And that's because we weren't like in depth with kind of like the people and whoever's gonna actually use the space.
Right.
I think that's,
or maintain it, or pay the bills for it, and more than anything else, the maintaining of it, or the understanding of it, here was the intent. We'd love to see what you do with it, but we often don't always get a chance. We have contracts, but we also sometimes take for granted, because we're so deep into projects, that people are just going to understand what spaces are for, why we made certain moves. And if they don't, sometimes they can get really angry about it afterwards when they're in spaces, or they don't understand it. So they don't take care of it in a way that, maintain it in a way that it deserves, or would help better support them in that space. Because again, we're not making it for itself. We're making it for people
Right.
to exist within, around, over, under, through, all kinds of ways.
Do you think were they doing any work related to sustainability over in Manhattan at the firm you were over there, or no?
Yeah, actually, there were some. Again, so it was interesting. I left Hillier, and my best friend that was at Yale had gone to this firm, and I just needed to get someplace else. And so I was working and living in Princeton, New Jersey at the time, and I started commuting back in. So I lived in Manhattan, then moved out, and then it was bizarre. So I kept going the wrong direction for work every day. But I started commuting in, and it was an amazing place. It was a firm called Hart Howerton. They're still there. We were right at Bryant Park. So our office was basically across from New York Public Library. So I took my lead exam, which was just one exam at the time. And I studied in the New York Public Library every day at lunchtime. Wow. So very cool. I took my architecture exams in the Chrysler building. The testing center was in the Chrysler building. I was right at that level where you could look out and see one of the eagles. So very cool experience. But this firm was as a planning firm, and it did high-end residential too. So very rich people's homes out in the Hamptons. And so I never worked on those, but I worked on the master planning, and architecture side, but big master plan communities. So there's one called Nexton, I think that's still the name of it, in South Carolina, outside of Charleston. And it was largely swaths of large tracts of pine for paper. And so Mead West Vaco, if you ever bought Mead notebook paper in school, they were large landowners, and wood pulp becomes paper. And so we needed more place for people out there. So they started selling large tracts because it was more lucrative for them to sell the land the pine was worth. And what happened is, so Southern Yellow Pine for 2x4s are around the age of 18 to 24 is the sweet spot for those tract to be harvested. But in all of that land, there's hardwood, old wood forests, and there's wildlife tracts that you need to preserve. And the law was requiring us to do that, but it was also this money game. So not all of those stands were planted at the same time. So the development planning parcels followed the tracks of when they could take the pine pieces. But also we had to protect the hardwoods and the old growth forest and the animal, but it was interesting to plan human communities around it. So all we were required by law, it made us look through a different lens. Again, I really wasn't still largely just learning things and trying to get by. I was there during 2008, so that was a crazy time to be there, but it was also being in the middle of Manhattan every day, like working. We would go and lay in the sun in Bryant Park, and just a cool place to be at that time in my life.
Yeah, so, that's nice.
Yeah, it was, we were up on the 40th floor, so I saw some.
Oh my goodness!
Saw some crazy things. Wow. Yeah.
Wait, crazy things like?
Well, one day I was on. So we had the whole floor plate on 3 floors, and I was sitting on the west side, and you guys may be too young, but I don't know, I was kind of daydreaming, looking out the window at the Hudson River, and I see this plane, and it's getting lower and lower, and this plane lands on the river.
Yeah. You saw it?
And the people start climbing out on the wings, and the water taxis come out, and at that point, it disappears. I'm yelling, like, look at this, look at this. So saw, what is it, the Miracle on the Hudson?
Yeah.
So that also got to, we had a house at the time that was having a giant fountain as part of the design. I mean, this was like a $60 million house or $100 million house. And the people who were designing the fountains, the fountain company, were the same ones that were doing the fabricating and building the fountains for the World Trade Center Memorial.
Oh, wow. So
they came in to meet with the team that was doing the fountain for this house. And I said, anybody want to go to lunch? And I wasn't working on it. Not too many people took them up on it. And I said, sure, it's free food. So they took us down to the Palm Room downtown, a couple of us, and they said, we were right across from where they were building the Freedom Tower. And they go, do you guys want to take a tour of the fountains? And this was while they were under construction. So we went and walked around in the footprints and saw we got the whole tour, got up in part of the Freedom Tower that wasn't very high yet, but just some interesting opportunities.
Yeah,
Saw the design, Arid's design of it and how they were working through it. So very cool. Yeah.
Have you been back to New York and walked through this?
I have not. I haven't seen the finished. So I'm going to go the end of this year, actually. I haven't been back to New York since I left. And
when'd you leave?
I left in 2010. Mm-hmm. So it's been, 16 years. And I had a love-hate relationship. Like, I always wanted to go to New York, and
the dream.
Naive Philip, young Philip, everything's going to be golden like the movies. And when you live there, it's just not. But I lived on the Upper East Side, which is called the suburbs there. But just great experiences and just interesting experiences, especially from a kid that grew up in rural Florida.
Oh, it's like a different world.
Yeah. It's a drastic difference.
I mean, I love taking the elevator here and sometimes being with my colleagues and having them complain about the 3 stops we make going to the 8th floor. But we'd go to the 41st floor every day. And
that's insane.
They had rush hour was a thing in buildings at 8 a.m. 5 p.m.
And you're not going to take the stairs
No. And there were 6. This was an old building. It was built in the 1920s. So it was like the 3rd tallest building in Manhattan. I mean, when you looked south, you looked at the Empire State Building, which was really cool.
Oh, wow.
And they had 5 of the elevators. 2 go from 20 to 40 in the first. The other 2 go to 1 to 20. So you don't get everybody on every elevator. But then they had, at rush hour, they had an old freight elevator, which was the existing elevator. So I really got to understand load bearing and steel curtain wall building. And this old guy would drive it and he had to brake it. And so you would go flying off your feet when he hit the brake, and then you'd open the door and you wouldn't be quite there. You'd be like between levels. And so he would bump it a little bit and it would,
Goodness.
It was interesting.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's kind of
but scary.
Yeah.
kind of like the roller coaster and what's the name?
The Tower of Terror.
They kind of stop you, and then you go, and then you stop, and then they kind
that
of
was real life.
No,
Yeah,
I don't do those.
No, that's
was-
heavy. That's
it was interesting.
Wow.
It was fun.
So you did mention '08, and
Yeah.
that you were over at Manhattan, right?
Yeah.
And how's that for you over there?
That was interesting.
Yeah.
So 2007, I started working there in '07, and I remember taking the job, and I needed a fresh start. And my buddy said, well, come interview. The CEO wants to meet you. I've been talking you up. I go, great. So I get on this train, and I'm a horrible negotiator. And any of my clients that are listening, there you go. But I'm sitting on this train and I'm sweating. Like, well, how am I gonna have this conversation? And I'm thinking, at this time when I was working at Hillier, I was making $40,000, and I thought I was making $10,000 more than all my friends who stayed in Virginia. So I thought, okay, well, I'm going to Manhattan. I got to ask for something ridiculous so that I can get to somewhere where I actually want to be.
Yeah.
So I'm going back and forth, and I go, okay, I'm going to ask for 60. That's insane. That's like that's 1.5 times what I'm making, if I took half. So I just sit down with this guy. I had my portfolio. I'm in a suit and tie, and he's like, flips through it. He's like, yeah, it looks all great. Tim vouches for you. You sound great. I really have enjoyed talking to you. What do you want to make? And there's art to negotiations. And I go, 60,000. And he goes, done. And he shakes my hand. And I thought, shit, I left money on the table.
Wow.
Damn it. And then I ended up doing the math and what it was going to cost to commute. I was basically making less commuting back into Manhattan and paying all the things that you have to pay for in Manhattan than I was where I was. But I was getting to work with my best friend, doing interesting and new work, doing master plan scale things.
Yeah.
So I got a really good handle on walking distances and the scale of things and how to build communities, plan for communities. But the point of that story was 2 of our largest projects were underwritten by Lehman Brothers, and in late Bear Stearns and Lehman Brothers were 2 of the big ones to crumble first in the banking crisis. And so it wasn't immediate, right? So those projects went on hold, and we had other things going on, but we were about 100 people in that office across 2.5 floors. And one day it came to a head, and we came into the office, and we were all sitting in big cubes. We had desk phones. We had big places to lay out drawings. There were 4 of us in a cube. And the course that day, they let 70 people go. So 70%.
70 people.
And all we did was sit there all day. I didn't do any work. I just stared at the phone, because about 8:30 a.m., the phone started ringing. And this guy would get up and he'd go down for about 10 minutes, and he'd come back and he'd have a box and he'd pack up his stuff and he had to leave. And
oh my goodness.
we were 30 people. We all could. So by the end of the day, on my floor plate, I was one of like 2 people left on the whole floor, and just quiet. And it was dark out, I remember, and they took us down. We could all fit now in one conference room, and they handed everybody a beer, and they said, okay, we got work to do. So, and I think it's because I was very cheap. So like, we're making money on this guy. We can't get rid of him. He works really late. He works all the time. Like we can't lose him. So that's what I like to tell myself. Why I stuck around. So, but it was a tough time. It was a tough time in our industry. If you look out now, about 20 years out, people my level, really well-seasoned project architects aren't out there. And they certainly aren't women. I mean, there are. I don't mean to make that sound negative. What happened was this industry is just, it's still got to get a handle on this, right? And I was a TA, and women were kicking men's asses in school. They just were better designers. There was more rigor. I think that there was a lot of effort that wasn't always the same across between men and women. And they, we know that you all largely get filtered out of this profession. And I think '08 was a crisis in that regard too. So, but it was hard, especially in Manhattan. All of these financial firms were crumbling. Friends were losing jobs. I remember hearing the story about the people that started to sell their advice or their designs at farmers markets, like for a couple bucks, I'll do a quick floor plan for you if you're thinking about designing a house, So we lost a lot. We lost a generation there. So it was scary. We took pay cuts. We took people, it wasn't tenable. So the industry suffered. But so it was maybe a burden and a curse. So in some regards, because we lost a lot of good designers and a lot of good thinkers and a lot of good people.
And do you think that is kind of affecting long-term how we are today? Like these people that you're saying we lost, do you think there's a lack right now of like mentorship in our generation?
Yeah. I think and I've been thinking about this since we first spoke about talking together. And I think there's an experience level there that, you can get 5 or 10 years out of school and know a little bit more and teach people, but it takes time to learn how to teach people.
Yeah.
Even then, not everybody can do it, but how do we talk a lot in the office. I talk a lot with the younger staff here and I say, look, I'm not telling you this. Well, something's going on a project. And I said, well, in my experience, this is the better route, or this is how I would look at it. And I'm not saying this because I'm smarter than you. I'm saying it because probably I did it wrong on a project before. And I learned my lesson the hard way. And we can try to pass that knowledge down. A lot of times it's just learning by doing, especially in our profession. But there's still, I worked with a guy one time and he said, if you're lucky, you get 3 or 4 major projects in your career. Think about that. Till you're done, till you're retired. And I've been lucky to work on many, but when I look back on key ones, it's 3 or 4, and I'm halfway through. But it's been 3 or 4 really good ones. I think I've gotten lucky too, in being in the right place at the right time. When I think about some of the key projects, all of them actually, or maybe it's just being able to see the opportunity in it.
Yeah.
You can't always see it when you're there, but when you look back, okay, I see where that was important. But the other side of that is losing that generational knowledge, but also the tools now are different. And the way we build drawings, or we have a computer program do it. And now it's getting everything. I opened up SketchUp today for the first time in a long time, and there's an AI assistant, which is good. So it's, it's asking you, well, ask me questions about how to do something, like, well, how do you use this tool? And I'll tell you. Or how do I create openings in SketchUp? And it'll walk you through it, where you had to watch YouTube videos. But I think there's more coming that's going to really impact our industry, to the point where, and I tell this a lot to people that work in this office, all we do as architects is document and administer a contract. We don't build anything. We don't operate anything on the building side. All we do is create the documentation to build it, and have somebody else build it and somebody else maintain it and operate it. And so if that's getting turned over to computer programs, and are we losing the essence of design and the qualitative side of it? It can only ever mimic doesn't have a soul, right? It doesn't have passion. It doesn't have anger and hurt and wonder and joy and
lessons learned.
You're right. And all that stuff. It's reading about lessons learned, other people's lessons learned. So maybe it has an idea of what that might be, but not what it felt like, right? Why it sticks, and why that lesson was more impactful than this for that person that it just read about. So I think those are the things that really are going to get lost if we're not careful.
Yeah, I think AI has a lot of strength in how you use it, the platform, not how you're saying like use it to design. And it can help with the door schedule, and stuff like that. So we can actually be more focused on the design aspect and trying to figure out how to solve issues. I think it has a strength. I do have a scare for it, because I'm like, am I going to be replaced?
Yeah,
And
I think that too.
Yeah. And another thing you said that really stuck out to me is like the three of us really talk a lot about, we talk a lot about mentorship.
Yeah.
For us, it's super, super valuable. And we just talk about it. And we ask each other questions about how are you feeling with this person mentoring you? How do you feel? You know, are you learning? Do you feel like some type of way? And the value is like, yes, we are seeking for that. We are like young and we're trying to learn and trying to do all these things. And we kind of want to learn from the best too. But as well, we have talked about not everybody, you know, it's willing to be a mentor. Not everyone
is willing to even listen to mentors.
Yeah. Or there's, you don't want to listen, you don't want to teach. So I think that's very important, like discussion to have, and it's real. Like people need to hear about, if you're young, you know, you're really trying to look for the good people out there and learn the most you can, you know, try new things.
We had this conversation last week about like multiple times, but about its point, not everybody can mentor and not everybody can be a mentee either.
Yeah.
Like you both have to give. And it is hard, especially being like just starting out in our professional careers, finding, and that's not to say if you cannot mentor that you're bad or you're not a great, like it has nothing to do with it really, but it's very hard to find that one person or a few people that really want to invest in, let me just throw everything at you and for you to absorb, you know?
Yeah. That's interesting. And I don't know what drew me to it, because I felt like I was always a loner in school. But I got out, and so I left Manhattan and moved back to Charlottesville. Had all these friends that stuck around, and we would go visit once a year, and it was just this amazing place. Dave Matthews is from Charlottesville, and Dave Matthews Band was still really big, so there was great music there. You had the mountains. It was just, you had seasons. It was beautiful, and I got to a firm that was transformative for me. But I got there and I started working some with the AIA, and we set up a mentoring program for the Virginia State AIA. And I thought it was just going to be, this is going to be great, right? It's going to be work out and be great. But mentoring is a lot like dating too.
Yes, it really is.
The whole thing.
You can get really, like, you just don't click. And I think you were saying that. Yeah. And so we were trying so many different things to get people together. And I ended up finding a mentor, and it was probably one of the last places I would have looked, because we were so different. But it was a woman named Mary, who was the architect for Virginia Commonwealth University. And she was one of the first women in the profession. And one of just a very wonderful, amazing person who listened really well. I don't think I'm a good listener, and I was always talking so much. And she had a way of it was just unlooked for. I thought, you know, I was going to find some other man that had been working at it for so long. And I learned so much from her and had so much respect for all of the things she'd been through that I recognize were probably easy for me, because I'm a man in a male dominated industry. And so I probably had unforeseen help or just even bias in some ways that she told me some about, you know, going through the college and going through the profession when she did and getting into it. And she was just an amazing human being, leading the design and architecture of this university in Richmond.
Wow.
So, yeah, very, very good experience. But I had some other bad ones that were men that I just didn't connect with. So I ended up having one of the best ones of my whole life was in that firm I worked with in Charlottesville, and we're still very close. But you know, the theory was always you need to find somebody outside of your office. So you can bitch about stuff in the office with them and get feedback when they're outside of whatever is going on in the office.
Yeah.
Just really good. I mean, the one that, you know, I love, I worked with him or for him, but I never felt like I was his employee, you know, just a worker.
That's always,
just producing things. So it was really hard to leave Charlottesville. But my family was here. But that firm, and I think you guys had a question about this, was like, who two guys there stood out to me, or what was, and I guess I'm leading you to this next part maybe, but
Go for it.
there was, it makes me think of, there was another gentleman there, and I remember getting to VMDO Architects, and they were doing, my friends worked there, and there weren't a lot of architects in town in Charlottesville, and a lot of them were doing classical, neoclassical houses, because it's UVA, it's Jeffersonville. It's Mr. Jefferson, and when you go to school there, you don't call him Thomas Jefferson, you say Mr. Jefferson.
Mr. Jefferson.
Yeah, at UVA, and these guys were so progressive, but more than that, it was about 20 people, and just doing fantastic work, and there were a couple partners, and everybody cared for each other, but really, really good work. And I started working in a community studio. Well, it was all community. Sorry. They did higher ed, sports and rec, and higher ed, another civic style, and then K-12. So I started in the K-12 working on 2 new schools in Richmond for a guy named Ken Thacker, who is just really, really a great man, is a great man. And I was working on those schools, and we talked about just being in the right place at the right time. Those 2 schools were wrapping up. So they were kit apart. So there were 2 new schools for predominantly African-American neighborhoods in Richmond that had, one of the schools was built in 1950s that we were replaced, had never been upgraded. Another one was like 1910 was the original school. Not many upgrades there. So that was coming to an end. And this other project needed warm bodies to help draw stuff on. It turns out that project at the time, this other gentleman was leading, a guy named Wick Knox, and old Southern family. This is a guy who doesn't own a pair of jeans. So very interesting person who is one of the greatest designers I've ever met. And he didn't draw a lot, but he had the ability to lead others to great and better, think about things differently. You know, we talked a lot in global approaches about looking at the world differently and seeing our place in the larger systems of life. And I got that from him. You know, Ken showed me how to put buildings together, taught me how to taught me that it's important to sit down for 8 hours and read a spec book and understand what's in it and make the right choices. But about that and how it leads to better design and how to look and find details. Wick helped me see the larger vision of, we don't know where we're going yet, but there's something out there we need to get to. And he had heard this engineering group at a conference talking about the first zero energy school in the US. And he got excited and he said, let's work with those guys. I mean, this is where we need to be. And you could probably look at this guy and go, that's the most conservative person I've ever seen, right? Don't judge a book by its cover. And yet he was also one of the kindest, most forward-thinking, progressive people I've ever met. And so we got connected to these engineers, and lo and behold, there was a new school that was being advertised for Arlington County School District, which was one of the more affluent counties in the US. So they had a lot of money right outside of DC, right? And they were building a new school, and we talked about it with the engineers, and they said, look, for this budget, which was massive for K through 5, it was like $35 million at the time. And this was 05. Or no, this is 2010, 2012. We think we could do zero energy for that. And the RFP wasn't asking for the RFQ. So we went to the interview and they said, we could do this. We think we can do zero energy for this. And the guy running the departments was an architect. He said, prove it. All right, we're going to hire you. Prove it. And so it was this big, holy shit moment. We really have to do this now. And these engineers were another stepping stone here, right? It's always about seeing the opportunity. They said, look, I think you architects don't understand that we can only do so much. Your building has to perform for our systems to perform in a way that uses less energy overall.
Right.
And so it's envelope. You have to seal the envelope up. You have to get the thermal, the R values right. And that's where I got thrown in as a warm body. Like, we need somebody to draw on this, but I didn't know much about drawing envelopes still. I knew a little bit. I'm from Florida. We don't do brick down here. We're doing brick. And so I just poured myself into it. And we did it. We created a building. I ended up working as a project architect on that one, and it was the largest zero energy school at the time. And it still is. So schools on average are 68 EUI, energy use intensity, right? How much energy a building uses per square foot per year. This building is in a negative when you add PV with the PV offset to it, which it has, but it's at an EUI of, I think it's 9.
Wow.
Between 6 and 9. It's a 110,000 square foot school building in Arlington, Virginia. So we worked really, really hard at it. And it's a great design. And so they hired us for the next one. So I did the next one. And that was a 4-story elementary school over a 2-story parking garage. So even more of a challenge. But had the time from this firm to go out and spend. I had 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, which it was 80 or 100 hours a week because I had a passion around it, for 3 or 4 or 5 months, just working on that building, working through sun shading, passive strategies, and optimizing it so they could lower the size of the mechanical units. And it was, those engineers taught me how to work with others, that I wasn't the hero, that it takes a whole village to create a building, and a place for these kids, and how to respect what they do and have them rely on me to make it come together. And it wasn't just taking a building and saying, hey, make this work. Right. Mechanical engineer, electrical engineer. So Wick was that vision for that. He kept pushing us. How do we do better? How do we, what's next? The signage and graphics in those buildings are amazing. Wow. All kind of pushed forward by him. So I was there for a while, working in that amazing place, and just missed family. So came back down.
So that's why you came back then?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because how long were you there?
I was there for 7 years. Wow. And in 2017 moved back here, and with nothing special in mind. Like, I was actively looking for jobs. Just to come back and move back. And Little had an opening for a project manager in workplace, and I hadn't done much workplace at all. In fact, the last 7 years I'd been doing schools. So, but I think Jim here in this office, I wanted to be back here. My parents were in the Ocala area. My sisters were here. So wanted to be closer. If I was moving back, I didn't want to be in South Florida or in North Florida. So I think he saw the potential of the experience I had in doing zero energy buildings and doing high performance envelopes, and said, well, let's get him in here and see what opportunities might arise. So I did a couple projects in workplace. And at that time, this office was small as well, as about 20 people. And so we were all working together. And that's when I met Pete. Pete Hall was here. I think he was actually just wrapped up CityLab. And we won the first zero energy school in Florida, the project in UF City. So there again was like right at the right time. The Little was already talking to the school district about immersive learning, different types of learning spaces in Florida. And the facilities director down there was another Mark Clinch, another gentleman who was very progressive and never judge a book by the cover on any of these people. But Jim said, look, we have a meeting with the school district again. Can you come down there? You have some experience in schools. And I said, sure. So we went down there. And so we're talking to the superintendent. There's a few of us. And at the end, this guy, Mark, goes, hey, this is all great. What do you guys know about zero energy buildings? It was like, couldn't have teed it up better. I go, well, I know a couple things about them. So we ended up competing and winning what is Neo City Academy, which is that was the first zero energy school in Florida. There's many more now, but that we had 6 months to design it, and they had 10 months to build it, and it had to hit all the targets. So wow. And I hadn't worked in Florida, I hadn't worked with tilt wall buildings before, so lots of learning curve. But Pete and I and this other gentleman, Grant, we were in it together, figuring it out. So that was my I love Pete, so that's where our love affair began, I guess. So we are, he's an amazing human being. Another one that I get to have the privilege of working with every day. Lindsay too. So very lucky. This office is a good group.
I was wondering, mostly education?
No, it's now all over the place.
Oh, no, all over the place.
Yeah. So
I was just going to ask you what the challenges were, because I feel like, I guess different in different typologies, but.
It's interesting in Florida too. We have so much sunshine. You think it'd be be a great place, but there's a lot of politics involved in everything here.
Yeah.
And even in the course of my lifetime, in 44 years, the politics here have changed so significantly from what they were when I was a child. And my mom's family and it's my mom's side that goes way back in Florida. And but what's interesting about Florida is most people do care about this place, right? And that's really what makes things, whatever side of the aisle you stand on. The hot things that always end up on the news are the ones a developer's taken a huge chunk of this space, but I just reading today, Florida invested another $6 million for 1,500 acres of greenway that now connects a long line through the state of protected places. And people move here because they want to be out in the wilds of Florida at the beaches or at the springs. So it seems like a challenge, but there are people like Mark Clinch, a facilities director at a school district in Florida, that saw the vision for how zero energy could change things. And not just, the ugliest, worst designed building in the world could be the best outcome from an energy use, but there's not uplifting anybody, their soul and anything like that. So this school, we could have made a really dumb, ugly school, but it had, it's got to uplift humans and then everything else too, right? We're just a part of nature. We're one species in a millions of species. We're just the ones that have become the most dominant, built the tools to overcome things to what we think makes it easier for us or makes it better for us. But does it really? I mean, when we sit in rooms with plants, things feel better. Even patterns or access to views and daylight. And we can't always explain it, but that's our ancient ape brain, right? That's our evolutionary traits saying we spent more time in nature than outdoors than we did in. So it makes sense to save energy. If you can do it in the project budget, that first school, they weren't asking for it, but we could do it and so that school was saving so much money, and the utility was only giving credit back to that meter at that school that the whole community, the whole county came out and said, we went to the state legislature and had them pass a law because what was happening was it was sitting on a credit. And the utility was saying, well, the credit's for that meter. They were saying, well, we're a school district. Like we have other schools that have bills. It's not somebody's house, mansion. We need that money to offset other bills. And so they changed the law and they said, if a school district produces enough to get a credit, that it just offsets the total bill for the district. It seems insane. Like you have to do that, right?
Yeah.
So these places change things. They change people and communities. And so why not, we run into clients that sometimes don't want to talk about sustainability or it's not part of their focus. But when you talk about, well, what if people perform better? What if your staff is happier? What if the people who come, your customers, are happy when they're in those spaces? Or what if they're easier to maintain? Or what if you just save money? You were going to spend it anyways, but we could save you a lot of it that resonates. There's always a triple bottom line to this.
Yeah, no, that's true. And I guess for our listeners, because we went through global approaches, we know what you're talking about, and we understand that. Yeah. But for our listeners that don't, know, like what, for example, what does net zero mean? What does LEED mean? What's the difference? Or maybe even the living building challenge. Yeah. There's so many buzzwords that sometimes, even as architects or even students, don't really understand the difference. Maybe you can explain.
Sure. And I had a boss at VMDO that said, stop using acronyms. You show up to every meeting, and it's easy in our industry, right? Yeah. But so when we think about sustainability, we talk about net zero, and a lot of people just say net zero. That's a net zero building. Well, what? Net zero humans, net zero glass? What is it? Net zero energy means that a building, and there's legal definitions or there's governmental definitions, but it's a building produces as much energy as it consumes over the course of a year. Mm-hmm. So, and the best way to do that is with on-site renewables. So the government, the DOE definition was, if you wanted to truly be zero energy, offset your entire energy footprint, you would offset all of the energy back to the source. So when energy leaves a power plant, it's at 100% of its production value. And as we push it down power lines, the same power lines that Thomas Edison invented and first started installing 140 years ago, you lose most of it through heat and loss. So when it hit the building, it's much less powerful than when it left the plant. So if you're truly going to be zero energy, then offset all of that all the way back to the power plant, and then all the way back to the mining used to pull the coal out of the ground, or the gas, or however the water generation. So zero energy in a building is measured in energy use intensity. So that's all the things that use energy, and microphones and TVs and lights per square foot of that building per year. So if you have 1,000 square foot building, it's all the things measured that use energy in it per square foot per year, and that normalizes it. So that means EUI is a number, like an energy bill. The lower the number, the better.
Yeah.
So it's saying you can take that number, and it's across all different sizes of buildings. It equalizes it and sets that as a measurement. And then we get into carbon. Carbon is really, energy is carbon, right? Energy is life, carbon's life. So there's two types of carbon in a building: embodied carbon, all the energy carbon used to produce, to mine extract all the materials. And then there's a line that turns into operation. So once you build the building, then you get operational carbon, and energy is a part of that. There's certifications for measuring how well a building is reducing its environmental impact or improving the quality of life for people, for places, all kinds of metrics. LEED is one of them. That's put out by the United States Green Building Council. And that is a certification system. Living Building Challenge is another one that's put out by Living Futures. So that measures different pedals. So you have a water pedal and an energy pedal. And so there's things about the built environment in each of those pedals dealing with water that you have to improve or reduce your use of resources. Living more in harmony with nature the way we used to have to before we could overcome it with technology.
Right.
So
interesting.
They're a good framework to use, even if you don't go after the certifications. There's just a lot of things that make sense.
Implement overall.
Yeah.
One of the things that stuck with me, and I'm never gonna forget, that I learned in the global approaches class, is I know we were talking about how it's not only about the building, it's also like the construction side, like when they're building as well, the building, how green is that process, that for me that stuck. I'm like, wow, I never even thought about, how the machine kind of enters, what types of machines are coming, how is this being built, what materials, how like the phasing of it also matters. And that can also be a good way to like help less impact as well. Correct. That was one of those shocking things. I was like, wow, I never even thought about just planning the construction better or learning about it to plan it better, or,
Yeah, that's interesting. And it's having an influence on the people doing that.
Yeah,
and sometimes there's a big pushback because largely unless you have explained it, it's a misunderstanding. But the way that I really learned how to design envelopes better is so we had the school, the engineer said, you can't leak a lot of air. You can't condition the outside through a bunch of cracks in your building or leaky windows. And they're supposed to meet a performance for code that the manufacturer says it can, but it's being built. There's 50,000 pieces that'll have to come together to make sure that happens right. And we're no experts at it. And so I was looking at other details of projects we had drawn before. So looking at those, drawing them, trying to understand how there might be some ability to create some redundancy around it. But then we got into construction, and I was doing the CA, and the client asked that we be on site every day. Contractors weren't that great. And they get to the part where they're installing the waterproofing on the exterior walls, and they're installing, the air barrier, and then they're working on flashings, and they're starting to lay up the brick, and the mason's installing the stuff. And so I'm up on the scaffolding, It's a bitter ass cold day in Northern Virginia. I remember freezing to death, and I'm on the scaffolding and I'm watching these guys fold this flashing and put it into place and install it on the wall. And this guy finally turns to me and he goes, "Who the hell are you? What are you doing here?" And I go, I'm the architect. Wanted to see what you're doing there." And he goes, "Why? No. The architect's the guy in the BMW that drives by, rolls his window down and goes, 'Oh yeah, it looks good,' and then keeps going.
Yeah.
Why are you standing here?" And I go, "Well, what you're installing is a dashed line on my drawing. And I've never installed it. And yet I'm drawing it and as if I'm an expert at it. And I'm using manufacturer's recommendations, but again, it's 50,000 pieces all being built by hand in the field in freezing cold weather. And I just want to learn, what does it look like when it actually gets installed? And is that the right way to do it?" And he goes, "Do you really want to understand more about this?" And I said, "Sure." I go, "How long have you been doing this?" He said, 25 years. I go, "Exactly. I've been drawing this for 5 years. So you have way more experience at it." And he goes, "Look, if I do it like this, if I fold it like this, then I'm not cutting this membrane and it's a better product for you and it saves me time. Is that acceptable?" And I said, "Yeah." So we memorialized it and I went back to the office and started drawing it that way because this guy had way more experience. And so who was I to... It met the manufacturer's requirements. It met warranty requirements. It made his job easier and it made the product better. So why not? I mean, how often do we stop and talk to people that are building our buildings? Or operating them or maintaining them?
I never thought of that. That's so true. I mean, as designers, as drafters, as architects, we draw things like we know what we're doing. But we really don't. And I feel like that's one of the main things that I always say a million times is that I'm not going to learn unless I'm out there looking at it. Because like, for example, today I was out on a site and I had done this like little concession stand, done the wall, done the sections and so on. And I remember going out there and actually finally seeing what I had drawn. And it finally clicked in a way that it hadn't clicked before. I was actually looking at the things that I remember seeing on my computer screen and noticing that, yes, okay, I did that right. Okay, that makes sense. Like now it makes sense. Like seeing things built together before they put the drywall, before they put up, they paint the walls. It's so nice because then we'll actually know if we're doing it right.
Yeah, right. We live in it's a 3-dimensional product and many layers that have to come together in the right way. And they're either very good or they're not so good or they're very bad and they're making decisions for us. So there's always debate. Are we drawing too much? But things are more complex. But do we want them to stand the test of time? Do we want them to be operated and maintained a certain way? Do we want that design intent to come through? And not just from a high performance or sustainability standpoint, although things get easier when you do focus on those things, but they're different to our industry. So it's not that they're harder, they're just different. I saw a really interesting interview with some guy. I don't even know who he was, but he was saying, imagine if we had started out with electric cars 100 years ago. And now you were trying to convince me to buy a car with an internal combustion engine. I said, wait a minute. So there's 2,500 little tiny explosions of this highly combustible fuel sitting in front of me every minute. And I have to carry this giant tank of explosive material behind me under my car. And there's 250 moving parts compared to 10. No way, I'm not buying that. That's insane. So when you start to flip these things around and look at them a little different, that's what school taught us, right? I know. I'm looking back at old drawings. I know that that's how that guy has drawn it for 15 years, but that was when it was acceptable, when gas was cheap, when energy was cheap. Even when it was cheap, was it right? And so, the building may not be leaking, but it may not be doing as good as it can. And the final pin in that is we had a building. It was in an existing building in Arlington, and we were doing I guess we were renovating a large portion of the building. And we wanted to check air leakage on the envelope. So we could right size mechanical systems, which meaning if we could leak less cold or warm air out, we don't need as big of a air conditioning or heating unit, right? That we're just spilling it out. So we did a pressure test on this building, this floor of a building, one floor on like an 8-story building. And it had 1,000 little leaks. I don't know how many. It had it had so many leaks that it ended up being a hole about 40 square feet in size. But so I said, to get this point across, we ought to build this wooden structure archway that's 40 feet square for somebody to walk through, just to show what we have to learn how to put things in perspective for people. Nobody could actually see a 40 square foot hole, but there were 500 little tiny holes that added up to the equivalent of that.
Wow.
That's insane.
So when you give that perspective to somebody and say, look, you've had this hole in your building for years now, and you're just pumping out the heating and the cooling to the outside. But I'm paying my bill. It's all part of my operating costs. So I'm really not concerned about it. Nobody's calling me saying they're uncomfortable, they're too hot or they're too cold. So everybody's got a lot on their plate at home and at work. So how do we get them to start thinking a little bit differently? But so it's just understanding that it's looking in different ways, framing perspectives a little different is what helps.
That's a good way to put it, because most of us, I mean, sustainability can be such it's a good word, but people that don't understand it may take it the wrong way.
It can be simple little things.
But putting it in perspective helps people understand, oh, wait, I actually have to be better, because at the end of the day, it's doing harm to me or to my friends, to the building, to my bills.
Yeah, there's a benefit. Like, you're going to pay, that client is going to pay less money for their air conditioning costs. But it's also going to improve indoor air quality, right? It's going to improve thermal comfort. It's going to make people happier in that space. And so there's large financial benefits to that. People are going to be more productive, you know? It's all how we frame it, what kind of perspective we put it on, and picking up on cues of what people are, what they need to hear, because not everybody can hear it. I used to just ram everything down everybody's throat. It's like, this is just makes sense. Just do it. Why would you do anything else? And that's not an approachable way to bring people on board. Right.
Going off of that, I was wondering.
I
mean, there's so many different types of certificates that a building can have, different typologies that have that certificate and so on. How do you propose, or how do you know what certificate for what typology is best for that client?
It's an interesting question. I think it's what aligns most with their vision or their mission, their core values. How do they want to tell the story? I mean, are they, like, our office is a space, so certification, because we can't control the exterior envelope. We were chasing Living Building Challenge on it, but there was a hiccup in construction with the construction waste. So we threw too much away accidentally, the contractor, and couldn't measure it. So we couldn't prove out that we hadn't recycled it or saved it or salvaged it, or there's things like that are annoyances or might not be something that people want to deal with. Like, we really had largely no control over that. It was a contractor issue, but so we can't get the certification. But it's telling me that I need to be more diligent and more rigorous with. We can keep clicking the easy button, but then we end up with landfills, and we end up with toxicity in people's drinking water, and we ended up with early onset cancer, and we end up with all these things that it's all interconnected in some way. But it's really easy for us to just say, just throw it away, just dump it. I can't be bothered to chase you down all the time. But when we do, things get better. So I think it really comes down to alignment with their core values. And the certification standards have evolved over the years. LEED V5, I'm very wonderfully pleased with, because it's shifted towards resilience mindset. And so that's something that largely almost no one can ignore, especially in our state. Do you want to be resiliency is zero energy. Resiliency is low water, it's low carbon. It's all of these things are interconnected. When we invite nature in as a co-designer, everything gets better. And that is certification paths have evolved to really just reflect those values or those parts of nature that serve the built environment. The alignment with that makes a better built environment. So I think it's looking at what portions of that certification really stick out and are important to you and what you're willing to fight for, the client's willing to fight for, and continue.
Okay.
Because turning it over on day one, it's great. But
you have to keep going.
Will it meet that performance in 20 years? Are you going to be around to tell somebody this is how it should perform, or does it need to do it in a way that just leads people to be better in that building and with that building? So.
Okay, yeah, that makes more sense because obviously, I mean, every client has their own mission and vision.
Right.
So.
And just designing smarter, right? Using less materials. The big thing now is mass timber. So massive timber, and that's just big pieces of wood that become structural floors, wood floors. And so that has a low embodied carbon because wood sequesters carbon. And when you put it in buildings, you expose it, and we evolved in nature, so we like patterns that are wood patterns and wood colors. So we feel better. And when we don't cover them up with ceilings because of that, we reduce our carbon footprint even more. So it's not hard, right, to solve things better. It's just looking for those opportunities. So,
well, to switch topics a little bit, licensure.
Yeah.
How do you think that's changed, evolved? I guess the importance of it during your time in the industry itself?
Yeah, that's a good question. I always thought I didn't think I was going to be an architect till I got to school. But once I was in school, maybe it was something about UF. And I wonder how many of the professors that were teaching me were licensed, I guess. I never thought to ask, but it was an achievement that there was never any doubt that I was going to get licensed and try to do it as fast as I could. Now that I'm licensed in 9 states. So, I have to sign and seal things in all the states. There's a burden, a heavy, responsibility with that. I mean, we as architects are in charge of health, safety, and welfare first. Don't kill people with your buildings. Now let's expand that. Let's not kill birds, and let's not kill people in other ways through dirty buildings or dirty outputs. But, it was never in doubt for me, but I've been really, over the last 20 years, very curious about a large swath of our profession that doesn't want to get licensed. And as I've worked in large firms and small firms, there's people in large firms that feel like, what's the point? I'm never going to sign and seal. There's always a project lead or a principal that's going to seal. I can do my work without having to go through that. But there's a rigor to that, and then there's a, I don't know, maybe I'm nostalgic. But there's a notoriety or a nobleness in that, and saying I recognize the importance of being a licensed professional. And I went through all this training, through all this schooling. So it's different now. It took me 7 years. So because I worked in firms that weren't doing everything. And so I wasn't getting those hours. And we had more tests. I didn't do it back when you had to drag your drafting table around. You still had that from some of the old people. And a whole day of tests. But now there's iPal, I guess. And so you can get licensed quicker, out of school. That's interesting to me too, because I can, there's people who can get the hours and get licensed, but some of them I know do what I say. They're ready to sign and seal drawings and create buildings and lead others. No. So it's an interesting time, I think, to be getting licensed, but I hope people really see the value in it. It's always, and it's fun. Everybody thinks it's like when you watch TV, almost every cell phone commercial is a shot in an architectural office. And I think that's because there's still drolls of drawings and models in those commercials. There's a little bit of a misunderstanding about what we do, but maybe if you're in a smaller firm or residential firm, but, you're a professional, and there's some esteem to that, but there's also a lot of weight and responsibility that makes it powerful. And wonderful and hard and at the same time. But we help craft the built environment, the way people work and live and play and learn. And there's a nobleness in that, I think.
Mm-hmm. No, I have noticed. I mean, we've studied for exams, and at school. At school,
We tried.
Yeah, that's amazing.
During school, you obviously don't learn so many different things that you learn at work. But then I've also noticed that while studying for the exams, I've learned things that I learn at work, because it depends on how big of a firm you're in, who your mentors are, who's your PM, what work you do. I feel like it's so important to just go. I mean, even for the people that maybe don't want to have that license because of X and Y, Z reasons, but I feel like it's still very important for them to actually go through the material, because the material is so rich, because so many people have gone through it. They know exactly, they've condensed it so much to the point that it's the information that I guess it's needed to a certain extent. But it's really interesting to see how once I've gone through, like we've studied for one of the exams, and going back to work, I start understanding why they do things a certain way. So things start clicking a little better. I mean, I do want my licensure. Hopefully I get it.
You will.
But it's I feel like it's very important for young students, young professionals to try and at least have that goal.
Yeah. It's supplemental learning. I don't get it right, but where we live, I heard this great explanation of what an architect really does, or the line that we bridge is the creative to the technical, right? And so getting your license says you've mastered those things in a way that you can prove it.
Exactly.
And then you've got a whole nother 20 years of actually learning it, right? But
and I think that's
40 years.
Right. Similar to being like a doctor and a lawyer, we're in this career for so long. Like, we're not experts after 10 years. You know what I mean? We go a long way before. I feel like it's going to take like 40 years until I feel like, okay, I think I got it.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm still learning.
That's this
20 years in.
But that's what I love too about this field is, one, you're always learning. And I mean, you can say that about most, if not all fields. But also you can do so many different things. And we talk about this a lot, and we compare it a lot to when you do your thesis in grad school. Like, you can do it about anything.
Yeah. And
you can explore so many things just thinking architecturally or whatever. And that's what we're trying to do with this podcast too. But for me, the licensure is also scary, because having the license, I think, as an architect, doesn't mean you're an expert right when you get it. You know what I mean? You've accomplished a certain amount of understanding and mastered in to a certain extent, but the learning still continues. And then as you get older, you need to evolve to whatever the new things
technology. And it's coming faster and faster for you all too.
And it's really scary.
I mean, AI integration into Revit now.
Yeah.
Even Autodesk, like Revit, if you don't change anything, if I have a wall that's suddenly elevated and I can tell what finish it has, and then I drop a storefront into it, Revit automatically, without me changing anything, places that in a certain dimension within that wall, from exterior to interior. And if I don't change it then Autodesk has now designed that for me. But when we were drawing by hand or drawing in CAD, we had to draw those things, be intentional about where a storefront frame sat in relation to the exterior or the interior. And now it has to snap somewhere. So Autodesk has chosen that. And that has implications. But now there's plugins that are saying, well, let me help you set up sheets. It started that way. And ultimately it's going to improve productivity time. But we craft drawings. All we do is document. And let's not give that away to AI. So how do we do that really well is important. And licensing I think is a big part of that. And then, we're the master integrators. We are the point on projects. We don't design mechanical systems, but we have to integrate them into buildings. We don't design electrical systems, but we have to integrate it. We have to integrate the client's side of things, their program and their people and their processes into buildings. We have to integrate community needs and functions into buildings. We're the master integrators. And that, outside of anything else, outside of having it lined up with the same esteem as a doctor and a lawyers, we are integrators. We use a design process to do that either really well or really poorly. And not all of us come out of school being great designers, but we largely can think differently about problems, whether they're, and we learn to use that word problem. And for us, it's something we want to eagerly get out. It's a problem, but it's just a different way of, hopefully we've had a different way of looking at everything. And you were mentioning that, we can think, we're creatives. It doesn't matter if it's a building or something else, right? So.
And I think going back as well to something you were saying for our listeners out there, I think it's like very important when you're a young professional to start seeing the people at your firm or where you work or outside, not even like this platform is part of that. And asking questions outside of work, contacting people outside of work just to understand how certain things work. And at my firm, they do this thing. We have like a mentorship program that kind of helps like the young people at the firm. They're going to be mentored by different people in different areas. So you kind of go through like a list and you read, okay, this person does this. And you kind of like can have a trial with them and sit down with them and talk about stuff. And then you can click or you cannot click and you can jump to something. Well, probably this is not, so I've been trying it out and I connected with this guy that I've never talked to him. I've never talked to. And he does he's been like at the firm for like more than 20 years. And he's been doing like all the construction and CA kind of area. He goes on site like every single day. So I told him, Phil, take me to this project. I have nothing, just explain to me how they're doing that corner. I just want to learn. And he's been taking me out and we went to this crazy, they were building a building on top of a building type of thing. So I learned an exponential amount of things just in 2 hours. I was like, holy, and then I come back to the office and I keep doing the things I normally do. And the other week he would take me or we sit down. It doesn't need to be, he's going to take me, he invites me to a meeting with the contractor and they're talking about, I don't know what. So, start kind of getting out of your comfort zone and you learn so many things just by asking.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty interesting. I've learned a lot. I really like the construction kind of side of it.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's scary or not, but it just interests me. Yeah, so much.
I love it. I think I'll wither and die if I can't go out to a job site. If I don't have a project that's not getting, because I spent the first, 5 to 7 years not having built work largely. It was, and it's tragic because you can't see, even just having somebody go, how do you want me to, I see this in the drawing, but how the hell am I going to get my hand in there to paint it or finish it? And building the tool, I remember UF has they have a magazine or a publication called Architrave. And that was there when I was there too. And it was making the tool to make the thing, which is so interesting. There's a really interesting book called Skunk Works. And it's how they designed and created the stealth bombers, the stealth fighters, and which is, death machines, war machines, but they had to build tools to build the thing. So they were going to send somebody at Mach, whatever, in the stealth aircraft. And it was going to go so fast that friction was going to heat up the aircraft to a point that basically it'd be a big oven cooking the pilot. So they had to build the special oven to design the cockpits to test them in so they didn't cook the human pilot. So it's this idea of another technical side of what we do, and getting out into projects and understanding how they go together is the best education. But also learning how to talk to people and learning how to talk about your work and getting on the same page with contractors. And they aren't always easy conversations or clients, and learning how to say things right in the right way.
Mm-hmm. That's the hardest part that they also don't teach you in school.
No.
And that's what scares me about AI is I don't want to lose that in-person, like real experience. Like if the computer's doing it all for me, why do I need to go outside and see it? That's what scares me. I don't want to lose that. And if the computer's doing it for me, why would I have to learn it? That sort of,
you don't feel that obligation anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
Why would I sit here and study if the computer just, I don't want to get to that point.
No. Yeah.
Personally, I don't. I want to learn how to do all these things, and I want to be able to look at that window and know exactly how they built that.
Right.
And
then speak about it in a way that my client can understand, because they don't care.
Dumb it down.
I'm not saying that's that's a very cheap way of saying they don't care. They do care. They want something put together well that nourishes everything they need, but it's not their job.
Right.
So how do I convince them that this Windows system is better? It's going to save, it's going to improve so many things, and I have to use it in less words and have to be very clear, and they don't teach you any of that in school. And then present it to others and present it in a clear way that's accessible, because you get in front of you sit in front of a bad speaker and they could be the smartest person in the world and you can't access any of it.
You're disconnected.
The information's not coming across in an accessible way.
Yeah.
That's so true. I mean, you almost have to be a master to be able to teach it.
Yeah.
So
there's a club that's out there all over the place called Toastmasters Club. I don't know if you all have ever heard of it. Toastmasters. And basically it's learning how to speak and present, give toasts better, like public speaking. Toastmaster Club. I don't know the genesis of it. Cool. My best friend started going to it in Manhattan. So I went, and it was a way of, how do I become a better speaker and get the information across? And even then I wasn't very good. Where I found confidence and I drew this building. I saw it through construction. I followed every aspect of it. And so I knew how to talk about it from deep within, because I'd spent hours and hours. There's, what's the book where The Outliers? Have you guys read the book Outliers?
Yeah.
It's amazing. And it's that really there is some innate talent, but the really great people, the Beatles, right? They've spent 10,000 hours. This guy did all this studying, and it takes about 10,000 hours to become an expert at something. Wow. And, we looked at the Beatles, and the Beatles played together for hours and hours at these nightclubs overnight when nobody was listening, and they were riffing on all these songs they wrote together. But one song, they must have played it 10,000 times. And, it became really, really good. In our profession, as any profession, it's the same thing. Or the Olympics just ended. Those people spend years and years and years. This is a little off topic, but I had built this bookcase in my house, and I'm on the floor this morning with my son, and I'm looking at the corner detail at the ground, and it was just like, I cut it and it was awful the way it comes together. There's this big gap, and I'm thinking, I don't do that every day. If I did that every day, it would be a great corner. And so it was making me think about all the things I do every day that I feel confident in.
Yeah.
And so as a young person getting out of school, it's going to take time, but go back to old projects, go see what others did, ask questions, see how you can make improvements, but get a foundation of looking at things where somebody's drawn it who really knew what they were doing. And that's where you can learn the most. And go out in the field and ask lots of questions. Talk to the subcontractors. It's not off limits. Find out, that guy installing that door. People in our profession have a tendency to think they're on that job site and they are the architect. And you are installing, that's the door I designed to be right in that place. But that person's installed 1,000 doors, 2,000 doors in their lifetime. Yeah. So ask them, how would you do this differently? Is there anything you do differently?
Yeah.
And take it to heart and take ego out of it.
Yeah.
No,
I still don't understand doors. I hate doing door schedules.
I've heard they're really hard.
Door hardware schedules.
I'm scared of them.
Yeah.
I watch a lot of TikToks of people renovating their own houses. Like I love watching that stuff.
It's so
And every time they do
satisfying.
doors, I'm like, yeah, that seems like a lot. It's true. Have you guys should watch?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Getting them shimmed right so they shut.
I don't even know what that
Yeah.
means. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, to wrap up, I
Yeah.
wanted to see. I mean, you've given so much advice,
Yeah.
but I was wondering if you had like this particular line or advice that you could give to anyone, honestly, either a professional, a student, someone just out there.
Yeah. Every single drawing you do, every piece of documentation has the ability to make something great beyond that thing itself. So where is that material coming from? What's happening in the communities where where the people that are mining the raw material or processing it to what's happening in their lives? How is it improving their lives? How is it going to improve the lives of the people that are putting it together on a job site, or the lives of the people that are existing with it in that space, or the lives of the people who are processing the waste, and the life systems beyond humans, because we really have a tendency, we are human, of focusing on that. But just expand. My advice is expand your lens a little further, because it's not hard to improve something, and you're probably already doing it. Just wonder why and investigate it. A lot of the work we do is not harmful or bad, and we frame it in that. And sometimes I get stuck in that. We're all bad and we're doing bad things and we can do better. But we just don't measure it, or we don't always tell the story. And there's a lot of good stories out there. So that was a lot, but I think just ask a better questions of your work and never stop treating every drawing as a design opportunity. So again, with Revit and the way that we work, other programs, it's largely creating line weights, and line weights have value even in a construction document set. It's not a finished rendering or a beautiful finished drawing. All of those things have value. Seek out all of the design opportunities, to one small detail to one whole building. So.
That's great.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Philip.
You're welcome.
This has
was
been
awesome.
a very insightful conversation. We loved
I hope
it.
so. Thanks for listening to me. Yeah. Again, you had a whole semester of it.
No, we loved it.
No, that semester was really
That
good.
was a great semester.
Yeah.
And I
fun.
hope our listeners also feel the same way. I mean,
They
it was a
will.
lot. Yeah. Don't know. It was great information. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.